register compulsorily, and then we have seen who are not required to register. We have also seen the procedure for GST registration. So in person who is liable to register, we have seen that if the aggregate turnover exceeds 20 lakh and 10 lakhs in case of special category states, then the person has to register. For exclusive supply of goods, the turnover limit is 40 lakh rupees. And then we have seen the other circumstances, compulsory registrations, when a registration need not be taken, that is when it is dealing in the only exempted goods or is an agriculturist, then registration need not be taken. Next, today we will continue with the further amendment and cancellation of registration. So in registration, you have to be careful which is special category state, which is a state, and then what are the limits. For Pondicherry and Telangana, the limit is 20 lakhs only. And for other states, it is 40 lakhs. Same way for the special category states, some places they have increased to 20 lakhs. So registration we have seen, now we are going to go to the amendment part. Amendment of registration. A registered person may need to make some changes. So in future, after taking the registration, the registered person may need to make some changes. There are two categories of details in the registration. One is the core field and another one is the non-core field. Now, what is this core field and non-core field? Core field means those field which requires the approval of the proper officer to make the changes. Non-core field means it is made automatically. So what are these? The core field and non-core field. Core field are the name of business, legal name. If there is no change in PAN, addition, deletion of stakeholders, that is the partners, directors, all those things, then the principal place of business other than change in the state or additional place of business other than change in the state. So when you are going to amend the GST registration is in the core field is when you change the name of the business. You are not changing the PAN number, but you are changing the name of the company alone. Say Suresh Industries, you are changing the name to Suresh Industries to Ramesh Industries, but the PAN number is same. So you are changing the legal name of the business, then amendment needs to be made. Then addition or deletion of stakeholders. Now what do you mean by addition or deletion of stakeholders? Proprietary concern, only one person, so you need not do anything. But same way, if you see partnership concern, then there are partners. Partners may be added, partners may be removed. So whenever there is a partner addition made or whenever there is a partner deletion made, then that has to be updated in the GST portal also. So that is what is the addition or deletion of stakeholder. Then principal place of business. Now principal place of business means what? You have registered an office. Now you are changing the office address. Then you are changing the office address from one place to other. Then that is principal place of business, change of principal place of business. Or additional place of business. Additional place of business means you are having a branch or you are having a godown. You are taking a new godown. You are cancelling an old godown. then in that case amendment needs to be made in the core field. Now these core field amendment are required to be made by the assessee and it should be approved by the proper officer. So when you are going to make core field amendment, one, then there is a change in name of the business. Two, when you are adding or deleting the stakeholders. Three, when you are changing the principal place of business. Four, when you are changing the additional place of business, either addition or deletion. These are the four situations where you are going to change the core field or make amendment of registration. Apart from these field, if you are changing anything else, then that is non-core field, like email address, mobile number, etc. So if you are changing the mobile number, you are changing the email address, then you need to go and make amendment in the non-core field. Non-core field amendment is automatic. Core field amendment requires the approval of the proper officer. And within how many days this amendment has to be done? So the time limit for making the amendment is Time limit for making amendment is 15 days. So within 15 days of the event necessitating the change, the assessee has to apply for the change in the registration. So that means if a partner is added, then within 15 days you should add it to the, inform it to the GST officer. Or if a address is changed, then within 15 days this has to be updated. Or if you are changing the business name, then within 15 days you have to update the core field amendment. So core field, in the case of change in core information in the registration application, the taxable person will apply for amendment within 15 days of the event necessitating the change. The proper officer then will approve the amendment in next 15 days. So 15 days, within 15 days you have to apply, and proper officer will approve it within 15 days. For other changes, non-core information, no approval of the proper officer is required. An amendment can be effected by the taxable person on his own on the common portal. So non-core field you can amend by yourself and no approval of the proper officer is required. The provision relating to amendment of registration are contained in section 28 with rule 19. So section 28 deals with the amendment provision and this has to be read with rule 19. So what will rule 19 say? What is the procedure to make the changes? So that is the online you have to apply, log into a portal and amend the core field or the non-core field. What is important is you have to change within, apply the amendment within 15 days of such change along with such documentary evidence. Say for example, there is a change in partner, then you have to upload the new partnership deed, change in address, then new rental agreement, new documents. All those things you have to upload in the GST portal. So core area, non-core area. Core area means the approval of the officer is necessary. Non-core area, automatically once you apply, it will be accepted. And if you apply in the core area and if the officer rejects, then the officer has to give you a reply stating that he is rejecting and ask for clarification. If he has any doubt, then he can also send you a show cause notice why the application for amendment should not be rejected. So if the person is replying within 7 working days, yes, if the reply is satisfactory, then approval officer will approve it, else it will reject it. So if the proper officer fails to take any action within a period of 15 days from the date of submission of application or within a period of 7 days from the date of the receipt of the reply to the show cause notice, the certificate of registration shall stand amended. So you apply it. Within how many days the officer has to take action? Within 15 days. So if the officer is not taking any action within 15 days, then it will be treated that the amendment is approved. If the officer is sending you a letter and then within 7 days he is not replying, you are replied, he is not replying, then it is treated as it is amended. Varun Enterprises, a sole proprietary firm, is engaged in supply of electrical good. The firm is registered under GST. Varun is the proprietor of the firm. He wishes to expand his business and his friend Arun approaches him to provide additional capital for his business if he is made the partner. Now, here what it is. Varun is a proprietary concern. And now he is adding a partner. That means what will happen? Will the PAN number be same? The PAN number will not be same. The PAN number will be different. So in this case, can the same GST number of the Varun enterprise will continue? No. Whenever there is a change in PAN number, new registration should be obtained. You cannot make a core field amendment. So here Varun agrees and changes the constitution of the business from partnership firm Varun, Arun and Co. Since the change in constitution of business from sole proprietors to partnership results in change in PAN of the registered person, the partnership firm has to apply for fresh registration. So if it is an existing partnership firm and a new partner is added, then only you will do core field amendment. But if the PAN number is changed, then core field amendment cannot be done. You have to apply for new registration only. Next is cancellation or suspension of registration and revocation. So what is this? First is cancellation or suspension or revocation. Cancellation means your GST number is cancelled. Suspension means your GST number is in hold. You cannot use it. It is suspended. And registration and revocation. Revocation means if the proper officer has cancelled it, you want to again reuse that, then that is revocation. Statutory provisions. Section 29. Cancellation or suspension of registration. The proper officer may either on his own motion or on an application filed by the registered person or by his legal heirs, in case of death of such person, cancel the registration in such manner and within such period as may be prescribed, having regard to the circumstances, where the business has been discontinued, transferred fully for any reason, including death of the proprietor, amalgamated with other legal entity, demerged or otherwise disposed of. There is any change in the constitution of business. The taxable person is no longer liable to be registered under section 22 of the or section 24 or intends to opt out from the registration voluntarily made under subsection 3 of section 25, provided that during pendency of proceeding relating to the cancellation of registration filed by the registered person, the registration may be suspended for such period and in such manner as may be prescribed. So here what is the case? So how can a registration be cancelled? Two methods are there for cancellation of registration. One, if the proper officer feels, he may either on his own motion, that is, he may cancel the GST registration, but subject to certain conditions by his own. Or second is the registered person by himself, he is applying for registration, or his legal heirs in case of death of such person are applying for registration, then the registration can be cancelled. And this should be done within such period. The business has been discontinued or transferred fully. So when a person will apply for registration when the business is discontinued. A person has started the business, he has discontinued the business, then in that case, he will apply for cancellation when he stops the business. Or he is transferred fully for any reason, including death of the proprietor, amalgamated or other legal entity, demerged or disposed of. So, if the business is transferred to another person, then also cancellation of GST is must. If there is any change in the constitution of business, so already I have said partnership concern becoming private limited or proprietary concern becoming a partnership concern, new GST registration has to be taken. So that is, if there is any change, then the old company, say proprietor, in previous example, the proprietary concern is changed to partnership, then the proprietor should surrender or cancel his registration. Or the taxable person is no longer liable to be registered under section 22 or 24, or they intends to opt out of voluntarily registered. So if someone is registered and they are opting out for GST, then they don't want to do the business, then they can cancel. And during the proceedings, that is in case any case is there or any proceedings is there, then the cancellation submitted will be suspended. It will not be cancelled. There is a difference between cancelled and suspended. Suspended means the number is still active. Cancel means the number is cancelled. The taxable person is no. So this is what is the cancellation. So cancellation either proper officer can do or the registered person can do the cancellation. The proper officer may cancel the registration of a person from such date, including any retrospective date. Now coming to the cancellation of GST by proper officer. What are all the situations in which the proper officer can cancel the registration of a person? So the first situation is the proper officer may cancel the registration of a person from such date, that is the date which he feels, or from any retrospective date. So this cancellation does not mean that he may cancel today. He may cancel from the past date also. Now if he is cancelling from the past date, then what happens? What is the impact? That means whatever input tax credit he has claimed will be lapsed. He has to pay tax for that. So all those things will come into picture. And what are the situations when the proper officer can cancel? When a registered person has contravened the provisions of act or rules made thereunder as may be prescribed. So if someone is contravening the provisions, that is they are going against the provisions of GST, and then the proper officer may cancel the GST registration. Person paying tax under section 10 has not furnished the return for 3 consecutive tax period. So section 10 means what? Composition dealer. So if the composition dealer has not furnished his return for 3 consecutive period, 3 consecutive tax period, then the proper officer can cancel the GST registration of such person. Any registered person other than person specified in clause B has not furnished return for a continuous period of 6 months. So a person who is a registered person, and if he is not filed his return continuously for 6 months, continuous period of 6 months, then his GST registration may be cancelled by the proper officer. Any person who has taken voluntary registration under subsection 3 of section 25 and has not commenced business within 6 months from the date of registration. So if a person has obtained a voluntary registration and has not commenced the business within 6 months from the date of registration, then also the proper officer can cancel the registration. Registration has been obtained by means of fraud, willful misstatement, suppression of tracts, then the proper officer can cancel. So there are 5 situations where the proper officer can cancel the GST registration. Whether it may be a present date, current date cancellation, or it may also cancel from a Retrospective effect. What are the 5 situations? 1. When the person has contravened such provisions or act or rule under the GST, then the proper officer can cancel the registration. Second, a person who is paying tax under the composition levy, section 10, has not furnished his GST return for the consecutive 3 tax periods. Consecutive means what? Continuously 3 years, 3 tax period, he has not filed the return. Then only it is consecutive. C. Any registered person other than specified in clause B has not furnished a return for continuous period of 6 months. So in case of composition levy, 3 tax period. If for a registered dealer he has not submitted the return for a period of 6 months, then he can cancel the registration. Or a person who is taking a voluntary registration has not started the business within 6 months from the date of registration, then also the proper officer can cancel the registration. Or if the registration is obtained by means of fraud, willful misstatement or suppression of fact, then also the cancellation can be done by the proper officer. So 5 situations are there for cancellation by the proper officer with the current date or retrospective date. One more important thing is, provided that proper officer shall not cancel the registration without giving a person an opportunity of being heard. What is the meaning of this? See, proper officer cannot just come to you and tell that I am cancelling a registration. No. He will tell that I am proposing to cancel your registration. If you have any objection, provide the objection within 7 days. So, proper officer, when he cancels, he will issue a notice to you stating that he is cancelling the registration. And in that he will ask you why he should not cancel. Give me the reason. I am cancelling for this purpose. Why you should not cancel, you tell me. If he is satisfied with the answer, then he may not cancel it. If he is not satisfied, then he may cancel it. And if you don't reply for this letter, then he may also cancel it. Provided further that during pendency of the proceeding relating to cancellation of registration, the proper officer may suspend the registration for such period in such manner as may be prescribed. So once the proper officer sends you a notice for cancellation, he can suspend that registration till the time you give the reply. Right? So that is what is the procedure mentioned. The cancellation of registration under this section shall not affect the liability of the person to pay tax and other dues under this Act, or to discharge any obligation under this Act or rules made thereunder for any period prior to the date of cancellation. Such tax and other dues are determined before or after the date of cancellation. If the cancellation is done, that means you are not free from your liability. Whatever tax you have to pay has to be paid. You cannot escape from that. If any liability is there, you have to pay even after the cancellation. So the cancellation under the CGST Act is deemed to be cancelled under SGST, UTGST Act also. Every registered person whose registration is cancelled shall pay an amount by way of debit in electronic credit ledger or electronic cash ledger equivalent to the credit of input tax in respect of inputs contained in semi-finished goods or finished goods held in stock or capital goods or plant and machinery on the day immediately preceding the date of such cancellation, or the output tax payable on such goods, whichever is higher, calculated at such manner as may be prescribed. What is this? So, this means when a GST registration is cancelled, say you are going to apply for GST registration, some company is going to apply for GST cancellation of GST registration on 1st January, when the GST registration is cancelled, on 31st December, there may be some semi-finished goods there may be some finished goods, there may be some capital goods in your hand. So when the business is stopped or registration is cancelled, there may be certain goods, semi-finished goods, capital goods in hand. So what they're saying is, when you are cancelling and you are having goods or stocks or semi-finished goods or capital goods in hand, then what you have to do is, you have to find out what is the input tax credit you have taken on that semi-finished goods, finished goods or capital goods. In case of capital goods, as reduced by such percentage basis points, which you have already seen in the input tax credit chapter. So in the semi-finished goods, finished goods and capital goods, check what is the input tax credit you have taken. Now, if you sell this, what is the output tax payable? So one is you check what is the input tax credit you have taken, and now at the time of cancellation of GST registration, if you are selling these goods, how much will be the output tax liability? So this input tax which you have claimed and this output tax which is estimated to be paid if it is sold, whichever is higher, that tax you have to pay either by debiting the electronic credit ledgers. In case at the time of cancellation you are having ITC carry forward, either you can pay that way or you can pay by cash. So at the time of cancellation, what happens? A day before cancellation, you may have semi-finished goods, finished goods or capital goods. So those goods, whatever the input tax credit you have claimed, compare that with the output tax you are going to pay if it is sold. Whichever is higher, that you have to pay. If you have input tax credit, pay by the input tax credit or pay by the cash ledger. So whichever is higher. And in case of capital goods, you have to, in case of capital goods, you have to reduce by such percentage basis point the input tax credit and then compare with the output tax value. The amount payable under subsection 5 shall be calculated in such manner as may be prescribed. So this is with regard to cancellation. So cancellation who can do? Either the proper officer based on certain conditions specified in this section or by the registered person. So till the time the cancellation is done, your registration will be under suspension. And what are the circumstances where the cancellation has to be done by the registered person? When the business is discontinued or business is transferred fully, either for death or by the legal hirers, then the GST number should be cancelled. If there is change in constitution, then GST number should be cancelled existing. If the taxable person is no longer doing business, then the GST number should be cancelled. So when the proper officer can cancel the GST registration? So the proper officer first can cancel the GST registration in two situations, either from current date or from retrospective date. So what are the 5 situations under which the proper officer has the power to cancel? If he has contravened the provision, if section 10 not filed the return for 3 consecutive tax period, other registered person not filed the return for continuous 6 months, voluntary registration not started business for 6 months from the date of registration, registration is obtained by way of willful misstatement or fraud. If proper officer is cancelling the registration, he has to give an opportunity of being heard, asking why he should not cancel. Then he will take a reply. If it is satisfied, he may revoke the cancellation. He will not do the cancellation. If he is not satisfied, then he can cancel the registration. Till the time he is issuing the notice, till the cancellation, your registration will be suspended. And once the GST is cancelled, the liability, whatever is there, you have to pay. Cancellation under this act means cancellation under CGST, SGST, UTGST Act. And in case at the time of cancellation, if you have any stock in hand, any capital goods, any semi-finished goods, finished goods, then in that case, whatever input tax you have taken, compare it with the output tax payable if it is sold, whichever is higher, that you have to pay either by debiting the electronic credit ledger or cash ledger. This is what is the cancellation and amendment. Any doubt? So now we come to revocation of cancellation. What do you mean by revocation? Now, proper officer has cancelled my GST registration, sent me a notice state that my GST number is going to be cancelled, but what happens? I don't reply and then he cancels it. But later on, I find out that this has happened and I missed to reply. Then what options I have? I can revoke my cancellation. There is a procedure again. So what happens is, subject to such conditions as may be prescribed, any registered person whose registration is cancelled by the proper officer. When revocation can be done? Revocation can be done only when the registration is cancelled by the proper officer. If revocation cannot be done, if the registration is cancelled by the registered dealer. So please note, when can revocation be done? When the registration is cancelled by the proper officer, then only revocation can be done. On his own motion may apply to such officer for revocation. So when the proper officer has cancelled your registration, then you can apply for revocation of cancellation of the registration in the manner within 30 days from the date of service of cancellation order. So within how many days you have to apply for revocation? You have to apply for revocation within 30 days from the cancellation order, provided that such period may on sufficient cause be shown and as a reason to be recorded in writing be extended by the additional commissioner or the joint commissioner as may be for a period not exceeding 30 days, by the commissioner for a further period not exceeding 30 days beyond the specified clause. So maximum 90 days, within 90 days you can apply for registration. So 30 days with the proper officer, additional 30 days with the additional commissioner or joint commissioner, additional 30 days with the commissioner. So revocation can be done within 30 days from the date of receipt of cancellation order, right? And additional 30 days with the respect request of additional commissioner, additional 30 days with the request of the commissioner. So only when the proper officer has cancelled your GST registration, then only the revocation can be done. Revocation means again bringing back to life the GST registration. The proper officer may in such manner and within such period as may be prescribed by order either revoke cancellation of the registration or reject the application. So proper officer cancel the registration. What you are doing? You are applying for revocation within 30 days. So once you apply for revocation, then what is the options available with the proper officer? The proper officer can, what he can do is either the proper officer may in such manner and within such period either by order revoke the cancellation. That is, he will accept your application and revoke the cancellation of the registration of the or reject the application. So you apply for revocation, proper officer, okay, I accept it, I revoke your registration. Or another thing what it is, no, I am rejecting your application. You have applied for revocation, I am not accepting it, I am rejecting your application. But when he rejects the application, again he has given he has to give an opportunity of being heard that I am rejecting your application. If you have any objections, please apply. So provided that the application for revocation of cancellation of registration shall not be rejected unless the applicant has been given an opportunity of being heard. The revocation of cancellation of registration under the State and Good Services Tax Act or the Union Territory Act, as the case may be deemed, as revocation under this Act. So revocation of cancellation of registration under state and good means deemed to be same. So both the places it is revoked. So in case of revocation of cancellation, what you need to know? So revocation of cancellation can be done only when the proper officer cancels your registration. And within how many days you have to apply for revocation? You have to apply for revocation within 30 days. And it can be extended if it is for a reasonable cost by the additional to another 30 days or by the commissioner to another 30 days. And once you apply for the revocation, the proper officer may either accept or reject your application. If he accepts, then your registration is again valid. If he rejects, then he has to give you an opportunity of being heard and then decide. So revocation under this act means revocation under the SGST and UTGST Act also. So this is with regard to the revocation of the cancellation. So first is registration, next is amendment, next is cancellation, next is revocation. Cancellation either by registered person or by the proper officer. If proper officer done, then you can apply for revocation within 30 days. So this is with regard to the revocation application. So any doubt in this part? Any doubt in revocation part?
No, sir.
So with this we complete this registration and cancellation. We will see some examples further. And once the cancellation is done, then a return has to be filed, that is called as final return in GSTR 10. So final return should be filed whenever a GST is cancelled. These things already I have said. Tax has to be paid on the stock, and in case of capital goods, you need to calculate the percentage basis point and reverse it. The proper officer cancelled the registration of Naman Associate on 11th October. The tax due of Naman Associate for July-September quarter determined by the proper officer on 16th December are 50,000. The cancellation of registration of Naman Associate shall have no effect on the liability of the tax due of 50,000, even though the tax due are determined after cancellation. So even after the cancellation, if the tax due is determined, the liability should be discharged by the person, by the registered person. The registration of Naman Associate was cancelled by the proper officer by an order dated 1st June for its failure to furnish the return. The registration was cancelled with effect from 1st June. It applied for revocation of cancellation of registration. The order for revocation of cancellation was passed on 31st July. In this case, Naman Associate shall be required to furnish all the returns for the period from 1st to 31st July. So since the registration was cancelled, then again revoked, from the date of cancellation till revocation, whatever transaction you have done, that returns also should be filed. So date of registration cancellation. The registration of Naman Associate was cancelled by proper officer by an order dated 1st June for its failure to furnish the returns. The registration was cancelled with effect from 1st January itself. It applied for revocation of cancellation, and the order of revocation of cancellation of Naman is passed on 31st July. In this case, Naman Associate shall require to furnish all the returns for the period 1st January to 31st July within a period of 30 days from the 31st July. So person liable to register, threshold limit, all those things we have seen. Then what is the procedure for registration? Then casual taxable person, register non-taxable, non-resident taxable person. Then amendment of registration. Today we have seen core field amendment, non-core field amendment. Core field amendment, approval of the proper officer is necessary. Cancellation either by registered person or the proper officer. And then revocation of cancellation. Now we will go to the questions. The aggregate turnover of Dhampur Footwear Industries of Delhi exceeded the applicable threshold limit of 40 lakhs on 1st September. It submits the application for registration on 20th September. Registration certificate was granted on 25th September. Determine the effective date of registration. So from the first question, tell me what is the effective date of registration. I want you to type the answer in the chat box. What is the effective date of registration in case of question number A? What happened? No reply. Within how many days a person has to get registered? Apply for registration. Then what is the effective date of registration? Check and give the answer. For question number A. What happened? No reply. Just a second. Which have filed the registration within 30 days effective date September 1st. Okay. So the aggregate turnover of Dhampur Footwear Industries of Delhi has exceeded applicable threshold limit on when? On 1st September. So within how many days the registration has to be taken? The registration has to be taken within 30 days. Now, when did the registration cross the specified limit? On 1st September. When the registration was taken on, applied on 20th September. And when the registration certificate was granted, it was granted on 25th September. Since the registration is applied within 30 days, that is on 20th September, then the effective date of registration is 1st September, right? Very good. Next question. Mehta Teleservices is an architect in Lucknow. Its aggregate turnover exceeds 20 lakhs on 25th November. It submits its application for registration on 27th November. Registration certificate is granted on 5th December. What is the effective date of registration? Second question, give the answer. What happened? No reply. Second question, read and give the answer. First question I have explained you based on that. Second question, give the answer. Okay, effective date, two answers received. That effective date of registration is 5th December. Why 5th December? So here if you see, when is the turnover exceeds the specified limit? Turnover is exceeding the specified limit on 5th December. Sorry, 25th October. That means within how many days he has to obtain the registration? The registration should be obtained within registration should be obtained within 30 days. But in this case, when the registration has been applied for, registration has been applied on 27 November. That means it is after 30 days, it has applied for registration. So in this case, what has to be done? In this case, since the registration is applied after the 30 days, then the date of registration is the effective date of registration, that is 5th December. Very good. In order to ineligible for grant of registration, person must have known. State which of the following suppliers are liable to be registered. Agent supplying taxable goods on behalf of some other taxable person and its aggregate turnover does not exceed the specified threshold limit during the financial year. Whether question number A is taxable, is liable for registration or not liable for registration. You have to give the answer. Whether agent is liable for registration or not liable for registration. Not liable. Why? Not liable because his threshold limit has not exceeded the specified limit. See, here you need to be very, very careful. We have seen that agent is supplying taxable goods on behalf of some other taxable person. So, since he is a agent supplying goods on behalf of some other taxable person. Taxable person means what? Taxable person includes registered person or person who is liable for registration. Though the agent turnover is not more than specified limit, since he is supplying the goods on behalf of a taxable person, then he is liable to register. Okay, so you have to be careful. Agent, in case of agent, his turnover need not be seen. Whether his principal is a taxable person or not, that you need to check. If principal is also not taxable person, then okay. Otherwise, he will be liable to register. Next, question number B. Agriculturist only engage in supply of produce out of cultivation of land and aggregate turnover exceeds the applicable limit during the year. Question number B. Liable for registration. No reply. Question B, whether liable for registration or not. So here agriculturist, we have seen section 23, person not liable for registration. In that agriculturist out of own labor, supply of produce out of cultivation of land not required to register. Though the aggregate turnover exceeds the specified limit, he is not liable for registration. Correct, very good. Fourth question. Read fourth question and tell me whether the pure oil is liable for registration or not. Only two of them are answering. Others are sleeping. Question number 4. Read and tell me whether the person pure oil is liable for registration or not. So here in this case, what they have said, pure oil, Delhi has supplied machines, oil and high-speed diesel in the month of April as per the details given in the table below. Pure oil is not yet registered. Supply of machine oil in Delhi 15 lakhs. Supply of high speed diesel 10 lakhs. Supply of machine oil in Punjab by Pure Oil from its branch located in Punjab. So that means it is an intra-state branch transfer which is not included as a turnover itself. So here in this case, since the supply of goods, exclusive supply of goods only, it is less than 40 lakhs, registration is not required. Now whether your answer will be question 8, Pure Oil supplies high speed diesel in Delhi. Sorry. So here in this case, the turnover is 35 lakhs. So not 25 lakhs, it is 35 lakhs and less than 40 lakhs, GST is not required to be taken. Whether your answer in this question 8, serial number 2, Pure Oil supplies the high speed diesel in Delhi in capacity of agent of Mixed Oil Limited, then he has to take the registration. So since he is taking registration as a agent, then in that case registration needs to be taken by Pure Oil even though the turnover is less than the specified limit. Examine whether the supplier of goods is liable to get registered in the following independent cases. Question number 1, read and give the answer whether he is liable for registration or not. Question number 1, read and give the answer. What happened? No reply. Raghav of Assam is exclusively engaged in intrastate supply of taxable supply of ready-made garments. His turnover in the current financial year in Assam showroom is 33 lakhs. He has another showroom in Tripura with a turnover of 11 lakhs. Now 33 lakhs plus 11 lakhs, how much? 44 lakhs. So whether he is liable to be registered? Yes, he is liable to be registered. Why? One is turnover more than 40 lakhs, he is liable to be registered. And even in case Tripura is what they say. It is a special category state there the turnover limit is 10 lakhs only. Pulkit of Panjim, Goa is exclusively engaged in intra-state taxable supply of shoes. His aggregate turnover in the current financial year is 22 lakhs. So he is only in the intra-state supply, aggregate turnover less than 40 lakhs, so he is not liable for registration. Harshit of Himachal Pradesh is exclusively engaged in intra-state supply of pan masala. Now pan masala is an negative category, so here the 40 lakhs limit will not come. So directly he is liable to register from even a single rupee. Ankit of Assam is exclusively engaged in intrastate supply of taxable services. His aggregate turnover in the current financial year is 25 lakh. Whether he has to register? Yes. Why? Because he is providing service more than 20 lakhs, so he is liable for registration. Sachit of Assam is engaged in intrastate supply of both taxable goods and services. His aggregate turnover in the current financial year is 30 lakhs. Here also is liable to registration. Why? Because is both goods and services he is supplying, so he is liable for registration. So with this we complete the chapter of registration, 7th chapter. Any doubt in this part?
No, sir.
Any doubt? Now we'll go to the last chapter, tax invoice, debit note, credit note. Tax invoice, debit note and credit note, debit note and e-way bill. So in this we will see what are the documents required to be maintained for the purpose of GST and what is e-way bill. So this is our last chapter. So now we'll understand some definitions. Credit note. What do you mean by credit note? Credit note means document issued by registered person under subsection 1 of section 34. So this is the meaning of credit note. Whatever document issued under section 34 subsection 1, that is credit note. What is debit note? Under subsection 3 of section 34, that is debit note. Continuous supply of goods, services already we have seen. Document also we have seen. Document includes written or printed record of any sort and electronic record as defined in clause T of section 2 of the Information Technology Act 2000. Then exempt supply, invoice, tax invoice, quarter return, these things already we have seen. So now we will go to the section 31, tax invoice. So section 31 subsection 1 already we have seen what it is, tax invoice. When the tax invoice should be issued. In the time of supply of goods and time of supply of services, we have already seen this part. In time of supply of goods, what did you see? That when you compare the date of issue of invoice with the invoice issued as per section 31. So when the invoice should be issued as per section 31, either at the time of removal or before that, where it involves movement of goods, or in any other case where making it available, issue a tax invoice. So first document what you are going to issue under GST is the tax invoice. So tax invoice should contain the description, quantity, value, goods and tax charged thereon. Then a registered person supplying taxable services. Excuse me. Services when he has to issue tax invoice within a prescribed period, provided that the government may, on the recommendation of council, specify the category of services or supplies in which the tax invoice shall be issued within such time and such manner as may be prescribed, or any other document. So we have seen that within 30 days of provision of service, the tax invoice should be issued in case of services. Notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 and subsection 2. So we have seen tax invoice when it should be issued for supply of goods, supply of services. Since already this we have discussed, I am not taking much on this part. Now we will continue subsection 3, which is our part for this chapter. Notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 and subsection 2, a registered person may, within 1 month, from the date of issuance of certificate of registration and in such manner as may be prescribed, issue a revised invoice. So this is your second document, revised invoice. When a revised invoice can be issued in GST. So when it can be issued, it can be issued by a registered person within 1 month from the date of issuance of certificate of registration. So only a newly registered person can issue a revised invoice. No other person can issue a revised invoice. In invoice you cannot revise it, but only in case of a newly registered person, he can revise the invoice. Why this is happening? Against the invoice already issued during the period beginning from the effective date of registration till the date of issuance of certificate of registration. What did we see in the time of registration? Within how many days he has to get registered? Within 30 days he has to get registered. Then becoming liable within 30 days. Now, if he applies for registration within 30 days, then what happens? Then the date on which he becomes liable for registration is the effective date of registration. If he applies for registration after 30 days, then the date on which the registration certificate is granted is the effective date of registration. So in first case, what happens? A person becomes liable for registration on 1st January. He applies for registration on 25th January. He gets the registration certificate on 3rd February. So did he apply for registration within 30 days? Yes. 25th January he has applied. So what is the effective date of registration? 1st January. Now what happens? From 1st January, the day he becomes liable for registration, he will not stop his business. He will continue his business and issue a tax invoice. Since till 2nd February, he has not got the registration certificate, his invoice will not contain the tax or the GST number. Why? Because till that period he is not registered. So what they are saying is, from the date he is become liable to register and till the date he is received the issuance of certificate of registration, till the issuance of certificate of registration, in between whatever invoice he has issued as a normal person invoice without GST. Only those invoices can be issued by issuing a revised invoice against the invoice already issued, from which period beginning the effective date of registration till the date of issuance of certificate of registration to him. So this is first document. So first document, tax invoice. Second document is revised invoice. Only one situation, that also only if the person is registered within 30 days, then only this revised invoice will come. If he is not registered within 30 days, then what will happen? Effective date of registration is date of certificate of registration. Then no tax revised invoice will be issued. Third document. A registered person may not issue a tax invoice if the value of goods or services or both is less than 200, subject to such conditions and in such manner as may be prescribed. So one exemption they are giving, if the value is less than 200 rupees, then need not issue a tax invoice subject to such condition. Third document. A registered person supplying exempted goods. So when tax invoice is issued when taxable goods are so supplied or taxable services are supplied. Now if exempted goods are supplied or exempted services are supplied, then what document you have to issue? Supplying exempted goods or services or both paying tax under section 10, that is composition levy, shall issue instead of a tax invoice a bill of supply containing such details and particulars as may be prescribed, provided that the registered person may not issue a bill of supply if the value of goods or services supplied is less than 200 rupees. So if a person is making an exempted supply, then what will issue the document they are going to issue? They are going to issue bill of supply, either exempted goods or exempted services. Or if a composition dealer will never charge tax, he has to pay tax on the total amount of turnover, then in that case, what you will issue? You will issue bill of supply. So first document, tax invoice. Second document, revised invoice. Third document, bill of supply. Fourth document, a registered person shall, on receipt of advance payment with respect to any supply of goods or services or both, issue a receipt voucher. What is your fourth document? Receipt voucher. Or any other document containing such particulars as may be prescribed, evidencing receipt of such payment. Now, if it is a supply of goods and you receive advance, if it is a supply of goods and you receive advance, then what happens? You need not pay GST on the advance received. But if it is supply of service and you receive advance, then what happens? You have to pay GST on that, on the advance received. So we are talking only about those taxable advances on which GST is payable. Whenever taxable advance is received, then what you have to do? You have to issue a receipt voucher. Not for all the receipts, this receipt voucher, this is specifically taxable advance. Only for services, if advance is received, then receipt voucher has to be issued. E. Where a receipt of advance payment with respect to any supply of goods or services or both, the registered person issues receipt voucher, but subsequently no supply is made and no tax invoice is issued in pursuance thereof, the said registered person may issue to a person made the payment a refund voucher against such payment. So what happens? I am issuing a receipt voucher. When I receive an advance for taxable services, I have to issue a receipt voucher. Now, someone has received the advance, the work is not done, the contract is cancelled, then what I have to do? They have to make the payment, repayment of the advance or refund of the advance. So when a taxable advance is received and your work is contract is cancelled and you are refunding that amount, then in that case, what you have to issue? You have to issue a refund voucher. So that is your fifth document in GST. Sixth document, a registered person who is liable to pay tax under subsection 9(3) or subsection 9(4). What is this? Reverse charge mechanism. Shall issue an invoice in respect of goods and services or both by him from the supplier who is not registered on the date of receipt of goods or services or both. So if you are liable to pay tax on certain receipts, that is on reverse charge basis under section 9(3) or 9(4), then what you have to do? You have to generate a self invoice, or you can call it as a RCM invoice. It is a purchase invoice you are generating on yourself. So RCM invoice you have to generate in case you are liable to register, pay tax under section 9(3) or 9(4), that is for the RCM. So this is your sixth document, that is the RCM invoice. Seventh document, a registered person who is liable to pay tax under subsection 9(3) or 9(4) shall issue a payment voucher at the time of making payment to the supplier. So what is the seventh document? Payment voucher. You are generating a self invoice, self RCM invoice, purchase invoice. For that RCM invoice, if you are making a payment, then payment voucher needs to be generated. So link is only this, not all other payments. Only the RCM payment voucher. You need to generate a voucher, that is a payment voucher. So RCM payment voucher. So what is the seventh document? RCM payment voucher. So what are the documents we have seen? First document we have seen is the tax invoice and the time limit for tax invoice we have seen. Next document is a revised invoice only for newly registered person, that too for a specific period. From the period he is liable to register till the effective date of registration. Whatever invoice he has issued, for that he can issue a revised invoice. Next is for amount less than 200, tax invoice or bill of supply need not be issued. If you are making an exempted supply or supply is made by a composition levy dealer, then he will issue a bill of supply. And in case a person is receiving a taxable advance, that is advance on which tax is payable, then he has to issue a receipt voucher for that advance received. And if the work is not done, then for that what has to be issued? Refund voucher has to be issued. If inward supply of RCM goods and services is made under section 9.3 or 9.4, then self RCM invoice needs to be generated. And for that RCM, if you are making a payment, then a payment voucher has to be generated. These are all the vouchers which we have seen. And in case of continuous supply, already this also we have seen. Continuous supply of service we have already seen in section time of supply. So I am just ignoring it. So this is the 7 document. Apart from this, 2 other documents are there. That is the credit note and debit note. So this is with regard to section 31. So 7 documents: tax invoice, then the revised invoice, then the bill of supply, receipt voucher, refund voucher, RCM invoice, RCM payment voucher. Facility of digital payment to recipient. The government may, on the recommendation of council, prescribe a class of registered person who shall provide the prescribed modes of electronic payment to the recipient on supply of goods or made services made by him, and give an option to such recipient to make payment accordingly in such manner and in such condition as may be prescribed. So these are the documents which has to be issued under the GST. And we have seen that invoice, tax invoice can be issued either at the time of removal or before removal. In case of services, it is 30 days from the date of provision of service, and banking services it is 45 days. Ritu Manufacturers Delhi supplies goods. Ritu Manufacture Delhi supplies goods to Parikar Electronics Haryana. The goods were removed from the factory in Delhi on 23rd September. Ritu needs to issue a tax invoice when? Either on 23rd September or before that, but she cannot issue the invoice after that. Katyani Security Services provides security services to Royal Jewellers for the jewellery exhibition organized on 5th October. Katyani Security Services Limited needs to issue a tax invoice within 30 days from the supply of security service. So since it is service within 30 days, that is on or before 4th November, service has to be, invoice has to be issued. So what are the particulars of tax invoice? Already we have seen that. Name, address, GST number, all those things, quantity, tax, those breakup, these things you can just see. It is only a checklist kind of a thing. And HSN code is mandatory now from 1st January, April 2021. HSN code or SAC code is mandatory for all the tax invoice which is issued. So this is the notification for HSN code. Aggregate turnover less than 5 crores, 4-digit HSN code is required if it is supply is B2B. If same aggregate turnover less than 5 crores, B2C supply is only optional. But for aggregate turnover more than 5 crores, B2B supplies and B2C supplies, 6-digit HSN code needs to be prescribed. So documents whatever issued can be duplicate for services, triplicate for the supply of goods, because transporter also needs to be given the goods. Now e-invoice. What is this e-invoice? We have seen tax invoice. Now what is this e-invoice? So e-invoice has been introduced for the reporting of the business B2B. So e-invoice means what? Electronic invoice. So what do you mean by this electronic invoice? With effect from 1st October 2020, if the aggregate turnover is more than 50 crores in any preceding financial year, any means what? From 17-18 onwards, if the aggregate turnover is more than 50 crores, then e-invoice is mandatory. It is not voluntarily, it is mandatory. You don't have the option. When if your aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year or any financial year exceeds 50 crore. Before we proceed further, let's understand the e-invoice. So e-invoice is what? E-invoice does not mean that you are going to generate the invoice from the online portal. There is a separate invoice registration portal, that is IRP. So there is an invoice registration portal. From the portal, you are going to generate a invoice reference number. So e-invoice, first thing you need to understand is that e-invoice does not mean that the invoice is generated online from the GST portal. There is one separate portal for generating e-invoice. That portal, what it does is, you have your invoice. In the invoice, you have your company name, you have your company address, you have your GST number, your date of the invoice number, the supplier in the name, supplier address, supplier GST number, then what is the quantity, what is the HSN code, what is the goods, what is the value, what is the tax. So many details are there in your invoice. When you pass an entry in the accounting entry, what happens? There is a data. The company name is there, address is there, everything is a field. This data of an invoice should be uploaded in the e-invoice portal, and then for that invoice number, one reference number will be generated, that is called as a unique invoice reference number. Now this reference number is a 64-digit reference number. Along with the QR code will be received, which has to be attached in your tax invoice, then only that invoice will be valid. So what is e-invoice? E-invoice means it is not generation of tax invoice, but it is a generation of online unique invoice reference number along with the QR code, which has to be attached with your invoice. And for those whom e-invoice is valid, only a e-invoice with a valid reference number will be a valid e-invoice. Otherwise, it will not be valid. So presently, what are the documents for which e-invoicing is required? We have seen 7 documents, but not all the documents e-invoicing is necessary. Only invoice, credit note and debit note e-invoicing is mandatory. And that too only for B2B and export purpose, not for B2C purpose. So e-invoice is mandatory only for B2B and not for B2C, B2B and export purpose. So what is the advantage of getting the generating this e-invoice? The advantage of generating the e-invoice is accuracy and reconciliation. Today, the biggest challenge for every businessman in GST is that getting the ITC. Why getting the ITC is a challenge? The ITC can be claimed only if the opposite person files the GSTR1. Now, if the opposite person is not filing the GSTR1, then it will not be reflected in the portal of the registered person and he cannot claim it. From 1st January, that rule also has been changed. So now what happens is, In e-invoice, immediately the data will be reflected in the opposite person since it is B2B. So there will be an accuracy and reconciliation. Next, there will be a cost reduction, elimination of papers. Document will be issued only online via email. Paper elimination will be there. There will be proper internal controls. So if I am issuing an e-invoice, if I make a mistake, it goes immediately to the opposite person. Opposite person can verify and tell me immediately that well, this mistake has been happened. So proper internal controls are there. Proper early payments are made and proper better relationships are made. So main reason of e-invoice is that there will be a faster processing of document between the one registered dealer to another registered dealer. So this will save lot of time and lot of effort. Even your GST or 3B will be refilled. And this is also eliminate fake invoicing. So who should generate this e-invoice? All those person whose aggregate turnover is more than 50 crores. However, there may be a certain category of exempt person which the government will notify. Now, e-invoice, again, some exemption person are notified who are not required to issue e-invoice. Who are these person? One is special economic zone, insurer, banking company, financial institution, NBFC, GTA, supplier of passenger transport service, person supplying services by way of admission or that is the theatre services, multiplex cinema. These persons are not required to generate e-invoice even their aggregate turnover is exceeding 50 crores. These are exempted category. Same way government department, government also not required to issue e-invoice. Apart from this, everyone whose aggregate turnover is more than 50 crores, for the B2B invoice and export invoice, they have to issue the tax invoice. So for B2C, it is not required. A taxpayer, say firm of advocate having aggregate turnover of in a financial year more than 50 crores is supplying services to company who will be discharging the liability as recipient under reverse charge. Such invoice has to be reported by the said taxpayer since it is a notified person. Then these exemption already I have explained. Special economic zone, insurance, banking company, GTA, supplier, transport service, person supplying services by way of admission, exemption, cinematic. These are exempted category. Maharaja Private Limited has an SEZ unit and a regular DTA unit, both having same PAN. Aggregate turnover for the Maharaja Private Limited is more than 50 crores. However, turnover of the DTA unit is 20 crores. So here that means what? The more aggregate turnover is more than 50 crores means e-invoicing is applicable. But whether for both the unit e-invoicing applicable, SEZ unit e-invoicing is not applicable. But for DTA, domestic tariff area unit, e-invoicing is applicable. So what is the procedure to generate the e-invoice? So the procedure to generate e-invoice is, first you prepare your own invoice. Now nowadays softwares like Tally and many other accounting software are there where you can prepare your invoice. Then what you need to do is you go to the invoice portal. So invoice portal you have to log in. First create a login, register yourself. Then once you generate an invoice, what you have to do is you have to generate a schema. There will be a schema file. That file has to be uploaded in the invoice portal. Log into a system and upload in the invoice portal. It will do all the validations. That is, whatever details you are uploading, it will do all the validations. If the validations are correct, then it will send you back the invoice reference number. So once it is uploaded, you get what? Invoice reference number and the QR code. You can see here the QR code. This is the QR code and the 64-digit invoice reference number is available. So it is mandatory that invoice reference number and QR code should be mentioned in the invoice. And by this GSTR number, the GSTR1 is auto-populated and you can even link the e-way bill along with the e-invoicing. Now, what happens that, sir, I have applied for an e-invoice, but I need to cancel it. Yes, you can cancel. But the time limit for cancellation is only within 24 hours you can cancel any invoice. After that, you cannot cancel. Now, you have generated an e-invoice. For that e-invoice, you have also generated an e-way bill. Then in that case, what happens? So, and now you want to cancel it. Now, if you are generating a e-invoice along with the e-way bill, first cancel the e-way bill, then only you can cancel the e-invoice. That too within 24 hours. And one thing is that you cannot amend the e-invoice. Once the data is uploaded in the GST portal and IRN number is generated, maximum 24 hours time you can cancel it. After 24 hour time, you cannot cancel it. And once you cancel an invoice, say invoice number 235, you have generated from your system and uploaded, generated a IRN number, that invoice number cancelled. So the same invoice number cannot be reused again. So that is very, very important. So in case of e-invoice, first what you do, you generate the system. In the system, the invoice is generated. Data is there. Software takes the data. It automatically logins to the portal. Two methods are there. Either software you take like Tally, it will automatically log into the portal and upload the data, download the IRN and QR code and attach with the invoice. That is one method. Second method, what option available is that you generate a JSON file, log into this portal directly, then upload the data, then download the invoice along with the IRN or the QR code. That is manual method. So always use a method where the software is available. And within 24 hours, you can cancel a e-invoice. If e-invoice has an e-way bill, then first cancel the e-way bill, then only e-invoice can be cancelled. And what invoice number you have used and cancelled it, that you cannot reuse it. So I have generated an e-invoice, but I want to cancel it. The time limit is over. What is the option available? Next option what you have available is only the credit note option, which we are going to see further. What is credit note and debit note? And invoice generating SAP system cannot be read by a machine which is using Tally system unless the connector is used with more than 300 accounting and biller software. There was no way to connector for all. What is this? Okay, what are the portal for e-invoice registration? There are 10 portals which are notified. www.einvoice1.gst.gov.in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, as on date, since e-invoice is mandatory only for more than 50 crore aggregate turnover, that is very few, hardly not even 5% of the registered dealer come under this category. Only one portal is active. That is the first portal, einvoice1.gst.gov.in. In future, they may increase the limit from 50 crores, so decrease the limit from 50 crores to 5 crores. So once this has happened, what happens? Majority of the person will come under the e-invoicing, and the e-invoice portal will have lot of load on it. So that's why GST department has in advance specified 10 portal for e-invoice. And in future, when the load is there, they may split the portal based on the state. Say for example, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, they may say you use e-invoice portal 1. Then say Delhi and Punjab, you use e-invoice portal 2. This way they will distribute the load sharing in the portal. So this is your sample 64 digit which cannot be manually typed. So manual invoice, you have to avoid it if you are using e-invoice. Printed invoice will be the best. So this is your QR code, that is quick response code. You can just scan it. You will get the details, following details. You will get the details of the GSTN of the supplier, GSTN of the recipient, invoice number are given by the supplier, date of generation of the invoice, invoice value, number of line items, HSN code, main item, unique invoice reference number, and the generation or date of generation of hash. So you using your mobile phone, if you scan this, you will get the details of the QR code and what is that in the invoice details. So dynamic QR code for B2C invoice, all B2C invoice issued by a registered person whose aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year from 1780 except 500 crore will have a QR code, but as on date this is not applicable since it has been kept in abeyance. So revised in tax invoice already. Tax invoice, revised tax invoice. These documents already we have seen. Effective date of registration, date of issuance of certificate. Sarabhai Private Limited commenced business of supply of goods on 1st April. Delhi, its turnover exceeded the applicable threshold limit on 3rd September. Thus, it became liable for registration on 3rd September. It has applied for registration on 29th September. When he has become liable for registration, 3rd September. When he has applied for registration, 29th September. Did he apply within 30 days? Yes. When the registration certificate was granted, 5th October. Now, he has become liable for registration when? 3rd October. From 3rd October to 5th October, will he stop his business? No. He will issue the invoice. Will he charge tax? He will not charge the tax. Why he will not charge the tax? Because till that time, registration has not come. When he has become liable? 3rd September. So what is the option available? He has to issue the revised invoice for the invoices issued between 3rd September and 5th October. Since it is applied for registration within 30 days becoming liable, registration is granted effective from 3rd September. Sarabhai may issue a revised tax invoice on the or before 5th of November, that is within 30 days. For the supplies affected between 3rd September and 5th October. Consolidated tax invoice can be issued when it can be issued when the amount is less than 200 and is sold to a unregistered person, then consolidated tax invoice. Then you can see the particulars. Normally everywhere the particulars will be almost similar: name, address, GSTN of the supplier, consecutive serial number not exceeding 16 characters. So every document number cannot exceed 16 characters. One or more multiple series containing alphabet, numerical or special characters, hyphen or dash and slash or any combination unique thereof. Date of issue of document, name, address and GSTN number of UIN if registered of the recipient, name, address of the recipient and other address, serial number of the corresponding tax invoice, digital signature, all these things are there. Love and Kush of Meghalaya engaged in supply of gift items and repair services provides you the following detail. Commencement of business supplying goods and services. 1st August. Turnover exceeds on 10 lakhs on 15th August. Turnover exceeds 20 lakh on 5th September. Application of registration made on 28th September. Registration certificate granted on 6th October. Company seeks your advice as to how it should rate invoice for supplies made. Is there any specific provisions for issuance of revised tax invoice to unregistered person? Customer, please explain. Now, Love and Kush Private Limited, where they are? They are from Meghalaya. What is Meghalaya? Meghalaya is a special category state. So now the turnover is exceeded on 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs on 5th September. So now for Meghalaya, what is the turnover limit? So the turnover limit is 20 lakh rupees. Meghalaya is not specified special category state. Applicable threshold limit, since Meghalaya is not a specified, right? So since Meghalaya, though it is a special category state, but under GST it is not under the specified category state for turnover limit. So here the turnover limit is what? 20 lakh rupees. So when it has exceeded 20 lakhs, 5th September. When it has applied for registration, 28th September. Is it within 30 days? Yes. When it has received grant of certificate, 6th October. What is the effective date of registration? 5th September. So from 5th September to 6th October, did he issue invoice? Yes. Now, after 6th October, what he has to do? From 5th September to 6th October, he is liable to pay the tax. On that, he can issue a revised invoice. So less than 200, not required. Jain and Sons is a trader dealing in stationery item. It is registered under GST and has undertaken the following sales during the year. Raghav Traders, a registered dealer, 190 rupees. So whether invoice has to be issued or not, though less than 200, but since it is made to a registered dealer, invoice should be issued. Dhruv Enterprises. Okay. None of the recipient require a tax invoice. Raghav Traders being a composition dealer. Determine in respect of above whether the supplies of Jain and Sons may issue a consolidated tax invoice at the end of day or not. Now here, since Raghav is a registered dealer, he cannot issue a consolidated tax invoice. Consolidated tax invoice can be issued only in case of unregistered traders. Dhruv Enterprises, unregistered trader, 359. Again here also, it cannot be formed part of consolidated tax invoice. Why? Because the value is more than 200 rupees. Gaurav, a painter. Again here also, more than 200 rupees. Tax invoice should be issued. He cannot issue the consolidated tax invoice because more than 200. Here less than 200, 188. 158 less than 200, both unregistered, consolidated can be issued. So bill of supply we have seen. Receipt voucher already I have explained. These are the contents, you can just check, almost similar. Then refund voucher also. And one more document is there, that is delivery challan. So what is delivery challan is that in case of tax invoice, delivery challan can be issued. What is delivery challan is that, say for example, the goods has to be moved. The invoice cannot be issued now due to some technical problem or that. So they can issue the delivery challan. So whenever the goods are delivered, Rule 55 specify the cases where at the time of removal of goods may be removed on delivery challan and invoice may be issued after the delivery. The following is the table. Supply of liquid gas where the quantity at the time of removal from the place of business of the supplier is not known. So in case of liquid gas, when the quantity is not known, they can issue a delivery challan. Again, delivery challan is your 8th document and it should be maximum 16 characters. So it will contain the date of delivery, date of challan, name and address of the recipient and the supplier, and then the registered person, HSN code, quantity, approximate value, approximate taxable value. Whenever goods are sent on job work, there also delivery challan can be used. Transportation of goods for reason other than by way of supply, there delivery challan can be used. Such other supplies as may be notified. So again, delivery challan should be issued in triplicate, one for the consignee, one for the transporter, one for the consigner. So this is with regard to the documents. Totally 8 documents we have seen, and additional 9 is a additional compliance. So one is the tax invoice, second is the revised invoice, third is the receipt voucher, fourth is the refund voucher, fifth is the RCM invoice, sixth is the payment voucher, seventh is the bill of supply, 8 is the delivery challan, and 9 is the e-invoicing. So these are the documents which has to be issued by in the GST. Next, credit note and debit note, section 34. So section 34, what do you mean by debit note and credit note? Many of them get confused in GST, and many accountants also get confused in GST. What is debit note and credit note? You have to be very, very, very careful. There are 2 persons involved. One is supplier, second is recipient. Now, who should issue debit note or credit note under GST? Or anyone can issue? No. Only the supplier debit note, credit note is a valid debit note, credit note under GST. Make a note. Who should issue the debit note, credit note? Supplier debit note, credit note is a valid. Now, how business is done? Normally, when the goods is sold and if it is returned back, then what you do? Credit note is issued. Credit note is issued by whom? Supplier. Now, when a credit note is issued by the supplier, what will the recipient do? He will issue a debit note. But that debit note is not the debit note which we are going to see here. Debit note issued by the supplier is one discussed. So, credit note issued by the supplier, correspondingly in the books of accounts of recipient, he will pass a debit note entry. But always under GST, you have to check the debit note or credit note in which angle, who has issued. Only the supplier debit note, credit note is the valid GST document. For the purpose of entry, only the recipient uses the debit note opposite credit note opposite debit note. So when are the situations when debit note and credit note has to be issued? That is mentioned in section 34, where one or more tax invoices has been issued for the supply. So debit note or credit note can be issued only when already there is an existing supply, not for a new supply. When already one or more tax invoice has been issued for supply of goods or services or both, and the taxable value or the tax charge in the tax invoice is found to exceed the taxable value or tax payable in respect of such supply, or where the goods are returned by the recipient, or where the goods or services are supplied to be found to be deficient, the registered person who has supplied such goods or services or both may issue to the recipient one or more credit note for the supplies in respect of a financial year containing such particulars as may be prescribed. So during the year or during the period or during a specific month or any date, a supplier is issuing multiple tax invoice, one or more tax invoice. Now there may be certain situation. One, the tax invoice is accepted, no change, payment is made, that is done. First situation, clear situation. Second situation, goods are supplied and goods are returned back. Supplier supplies goods, due to some reason there is a sales return. Then what document supplier should issue? He should issue a credit note. First situation for credit note by supplier. Second, goods are supplied or services are supplied, but it is found that where it has to charge 12% tax, 18% tax has been charged. That means what? The tax has been charged higher. Or where it is found that the person has to charge 10,000 only, but in the invoice it has charged 12,000. That means what? It has charged higher value, either higher value of tax or higher value in the goods or services. Then how to reduce that? You cannot revise any invoice in GST. You cannot revise an invoice. So what you have to do? Issue a credit note for the difference. If tax is charged higher, then you issue a credit note for 6% of tax. If the value is charged higher for 2,000 rupees, issue a credit note along with the document. So these are the three important situations. When there is a sale return, credit note issued by the supplier. When the value is charged is higher, then credit note is issued. When of tax is charged higher, then credit note is issued. Now, what is the impact of this credit note on the books of accounts? For the supplier, when the credit note is issued, the output tax is reduced. For the recipient, when the credit note is issued, the ITC is reduced. Clear? Credit note, when it is issued by the supplier, is output tax is reduced. For the recipient, is input tax is reduced. So that is very, very important tax document. Advantage for the supplier, disadvantage for the recipient, it is a reduction in the ITC. So one or more issue, debit note or credit note can be issued. Or if there is a rate difference, say 100 rupees you have charged, now you want to charge 90, again issue a credit note. So who has to issue credit note? Supplier. Three situations: one, sales return; second, value charge is excess; third, tax charge is excess. Or rate difference you are reducing. So in that case, credit note should be issued, matching with the invoices. That is very important. So every credit note will have a link to a previous invoice. Any registered person who issues a credit note in relation to supply of goods or services or both shall declare the details of such credit note in the return for the month during which he has filed, and shall not issue but not later than September following the end of the financial year in which such supply was made, or date of furnishing the annual return, whichever is earlier. See, what did I say? When credit note is issued, reduction of tax liability for supplier, reduction of ITC for the recipient. Both the cases, government, there is a loss. Why? Both the cases, government reduces the tax liability, right? So in this case, what they say, whenever the credit note is issued for any financial year, what is the last date for issuing the credit note? Last date of filing the return for the month of September the following year. So for any financial year, if you want to issue credit note, you have to issue by last date of filing the return for the month of September, or filing of annual return, whichever is earlier. And provided that no reduction in output tax liability of the supplier shall be permitted if the incidence of tax, interest and such supply has been passed to another person. Where one or more tax issued for supply of goods or services or both, and the taxable value or the tax charge in that tax invoice is found to be less than the taxable value or tax payable in respect of such supply, the registered person who has supplied such goods or services or both shall issue to the recipient one or more debit note for supplies made in the financial year containing such particulars as may be issued. So what happens when the debit note can be issued? Debit note can be issued only two situations. When the tax charge in the invoice is found to be less than the taxable value as payable, or the value charge is found to be less. Say for example, 1000 rupees you have to charge, but you have charged only 800 rupees. So for 200 rupees, what are you going to issue? Debit note. You have to charge tax at the rate of 18%, but you have charged in the invoice 12%. So 6% tax shortage you have charged, for that debit note should be issued. By debit note, what happens? The output of the supplier is increased, ITC of the recipient is increased. So debit note only two situations. When who has to issue debit note? Supplier. When the tax value charge is lesser or the tax charge is lesser, then only debit note will be issued. A registered person who issues debit note in relation to a supply of goods or services or both shall declare the detailed note in the return, and all those compliance procedures are there. So there is no deadline for issue of debit note. Why? Because anyway for the government it is a revenue, so they have not given any debit note. So debit note and credit note, who has to issue? Supplier only. When credit note is issued, three situation: sales return, tax charge is higher, value charge is higher. Credit note, three situation: sales return, tax charge is higher, value charge is higher. Debit note, two situation: tax charge is less, value charge is less, then debit note will be issued. Is there any deadline for issue of credit note? Yes, last date of filing the return for the month of September the following year, or the filing of annual return, whichever is earlier. So the debit note and credit notes will have reference to the previous invoice number. Then only debit note and credit note can be issued. So Karthik and Company, a registered supplier under GST, provides the following information regarding various tax invoice issued by it during the month of March. Value of supply invoice number 1, 2,50,000 against actual taxable value of 2,30,000. Value of supply charge in invoice number 1 was how much? 2,50,000. How much he has charged? 2,30,000. Sorry, he has charged 2,50,000, but actual value is what? 2,30,000. That means the value is in excess of actual value. So what you have to issue? The supplier should issue a credit note. Tax charge in the invoice number 4, 32,000 against actual liability of 68,000 due to wrong HSN code. So what was the tax charge? 32, but actually how much he has to charge? 68. That means he has charged less than what he has to issue. The supplier has to issue debit note for the difference in tax value. Value charge in invoice number 8 was 3,20,000 against actual value of 4,20,000. So now what is that? Value is charged less. What to issue? Debit note has to be issued. Right? So this is debit note and credit note. Prohibition of unauthorized collection of tax. So only registered person can collect tax under the Goods and Services Tax Act. That's why we say that we are issuing revised invoice. When revised invoice is issued, when the, what they say, only for a specific period. So during the time of registration, liable to register, and till the time he is getting registered, he cannot issue a tax invoice. Why? Because at that time he is not authorized. Only after registration he is authorized for registration. Now the last part, e-way bill. So we'll complete this e-way bill, and this our GST will be concluded. So what is e-way bill? So way bill, what is way bill? Transportation of material. Whenever the goods are transported, then what they do? They transport the goods via transporter. What transporter will do? He will issue a way bill. That means the proof of transportation of goods is called as way bill. Like how we have seen in the e-invoicing that the details pertaining to invoice are uploaded and reference number is created. Same way in way bill, whenever the goods are transported, prior to transportation or movement of goods, the way bill should be uploaded and e-way bill should be generated. Then only movement of goods should be done. Prior to this e-way bill, these were check posts in the all over India, and goods were verified whether bill documents are there. But now it has been removed because of e-way bill, because it is mandatory that if the goods are transported via transporter more than 50 lakhs or 1 lakh, which we are going to see, then e-way bill is mandatory, right? So e-way bill is for the transportation of goods. Whenever goods are transported, then e-way bill is mandatory. So there is a statutory requirement under section 68 that a person requiring in charge of the conveyance. Conveyance means the vehicle. It may be a vehicle, or it may be an aircraft, or it may be a train, or it may be a vessel, whatever it is. Consignment of value not exceeding such amount as specified. Prescribes e-way bill. That is the document which has to be there. What is a e-way bill? A way bill is a receipt or documents issued by a carrier giving details and instruction relating to shipment of consignment of goods and details including name of consignor, consignee, point of origin, consignment. So what is waybill? Whenever transportation is there, transporter gives you a document, that is who is loading this goods, where and to whom the goods are being sent, where the goods are being sent, what is the route, what is the destination, all those things are uploaded in the electronic format, that is called as e-waybill. So e-waybill is a compliance mechanism wherein by way of digital interface, the person causing the movement of goods upload the relevant information prior to commencement of movement of goods and generate e-waybill on the GST portal. In e-waybill is an electronic document generated on the GST portal evidencing movement of goods. So it is an evidence that a movement of goods is being made. In between, if some officer catches and you say that e-waybill is not there, then he may be penalized. So e-waybill is mandatory. What is the benefit of e-waybill? Physical interface to pave way for digital interface, resulting in elimination of check post. So now no check post are there. Goods are moved faster. So if a goods is moving from 5 states and there is a check post, so a lot of time is wasted. So now that time is saved. It will facilitate faster movement of goods. It will improve the turnaround time of truck and help the logistic industry by increasing the average distance traveled, reducing the travel time as well as the cost. So since there is less stoppage, the life of the truck and the mileage of the truck will increase. This will increase in reducing the time and also the cost of the maintenance of the vehicle. So this is the advantage. So how the e-waybill is generated? Like e-invoice, e-waybill also one portal is there. E-waybill gst.gov.in. Using that, e-waybill can be generated. So again, same method. Use an accounting software. Automatically it will log in, generate the e-waybill, or transfer the JSON file, upload it, log in and upload it. Then you can generate the e-waybill. So facilitation of cancellation, updation, everything is online in that portal. Who can issue the e-waybill? Either the supplier can generate the e-waybill or the transporter can generate the e-waybill. So normally e-waybill has 2 parts. One is part A and part B. When e-waybill is required to be generated, it is required whenever there is a movement of value exceeding more than 50,000 rupees in case of an interstate supply. In case of an inter-supply, some state it is 1 lakh, some state it is 50,000 rupees. So whenever there is a movement of goods of consignment value exceeding 50,000 in relation to supply or for the reasons other than supply due to inward from an unregistered person. So whenever there is an inward from unregistered person, then also you can generate a e-waybill. So for the purpose of causing movement of such good, e-waybill needs to be generated. And part A of the form GST EWB before the commencement of such movement. So whenever the goods are transported, before the transportation of the goods, part A should be filled. Part A contains the details of the e-waybill. Part B contains the details of the vehicle and the transporter. And the value will be based on the invoice value or as per valuation rule section 15. So whatever value declared in the delivery challan, all those things. And also the 50,000 value will be inclusive of the tax. So you should not take the gross value. It should take the net invoice value. So Banu Pratap shoe manufacturer registered in Punjab, sold shoes to retail seller in Gujarat as well as value of 48,000. Levied at the rate of 18%. Want to send the consignment. For how much value it is? 56,000. More than 50,000? Yes, e-waybill is mandatory. Now the cloth value is 48,000, no tax. Then e-waybill is mandatory, not required since it is less than 50,000. But if he wants, he can generate a e-waybill. Situation where e-waybill needs to be issued even if the value of consignment is less than 50,000. So there are certain situations where the value of goods is less than 50,000, then also e-waybill needs to be issued. What is that? When a interstate transfer of goods by principal to job worker. So whenever there is an interstate, say I am a furniture manufacturer, I am in Chennai, I am sending my goods for job work, that is plywood, mica, all those hardware, to a person in Bangalore for the purpose of making furniture and sending it back to me. What is that person doing? He is doing only services. My material I am supplying, he will work on it and then send it to me. That is job work. In that case, even if the value is less than 50,000, e-way bill needs to be generated. Interstate transfer of handicraft goods by a person exempted from obtaining registration. So there also e-way bill is mandatory. And already I said that ship to and bill to. Even in case of ship to and bill to, e-way bill is necessary. So where ship to means what? Person is supplying goods to another person but making the delivery to another person. So in that case, e-way bill needs to be generated. So what are the information you are going to furnish in e-way bill? Part A will comprise the details of GSTN of the supplier and the recipient, place of delivery indicating the PIN code and the distance, document, tax invoice, that is what you are supplying, the document, tax invoice or bill of supply or delivery challan or bill of entry, number and date and value, HSN code, reason for transportation, etc. And part B will contain the transporter detail, that is his ID or the railway receipt number or the airway bill number in case of air or bill of lading in case of the movement by ship. Information and part A may be furnished either by the transporter or by the e-commerce operator or the courier agency or the supplier. So whenever goods are transported by road, in before movement, you provide the details of part A and part B. But when the goods are transported in railway or air or by vessel, then part A has to be filled first. Part B can be filled only after receipt of the railway receipt or the airway bill details. When it is not mandatory to furnish part B. I said part A and part B are there. Part A mandatory, part B also mandatory, but only for a specific period part B is not required. When it is not required is, however, the details of conveyance may not be furnished in part B. Part A is mandatory. Of the e-way bill, where the goods are transported for a distance up to 50 kilometers within the state and union territory. For what purpose? For the purpose from the place of business of the supplier to transporter for further transportation or for the purpose of weighment. Only these two purposes you need not generate part B. Otherwise, part B is mandatory. What happens when the goods are transferred from one conveyance to another? A person is transporting the goods, he has generated part A, he has generated part B, in between the vehicle is broken down and he is transferring the goods from this vehicle to another vehicle. Then again he has to update the part B. Part B can be updated any number of times. There is something called as consolidated e-way bill. Say you are having 10 individual e-way bill, and those 10 individual e-way bill is going in a single vehicle. Then you can generate a consolidated e-way bill giving the 10 e-way bill number, that is form GST EWB 02. Now cancellation of e-way bill. Can e-way bill be cancelled? First you should know that there is a validity of e-way bill. What is the validity of e-way bill? If the distance transported is up to 200 kilometers, then the e-way bill is valid for 1 day in case of other than over-dimensional cargo or multimodal shipment in which at least one leg involves transportation by ship. So if it is up to 200 kilometers other than over-dimensional cargo or multimodal shipment, then it is 200 kilometers. Normal circumstances 200. Multimodal means big lorry, that is 16 wheeler lorry or by ship, then only it is more. Otherwise it is 1 day per 200 kilometer. So for every additional kilometer 200. Say for example from Chennai to Bangalore it is 350 kilometers. Then how many days it is valid? 2 days validity is there. And in case of over dimensional cargo or the shipment it was one leg movement or one movement by ship, then it is up to 20 kilometers. And for every 20 kilometers per day, they are giving you the validity. And the validity starts from when? Say for example, now it is 9, the time is 9:30. I am generating a e-way bill. 24-hour, 1 day validity. 1 day validity does not mean it is 24 hours. Now 1 day validity means next day till midnight 12 o'clock the validity is there. Say 2 day validity means today is 2nd. 2 day validity means 2nd is there, 3rd is there, 4th night 12 o'clock only the validity will get over. Same way, e-way bill once generated, you cannot cancel it. But certain extended validity extension can be done with the prior approval of the commissioner. You cannot amend the e-way bill. You can cancel provided it is within the time limit of the validity. Once it is verified in between, then you cannot cancel it. And once the e-way bill is issued, it can be either accepted or rejected by the recipient within 72 hours or at the time of delivery of goods. So one e-way bill generated in one state is valid in another state. So e-way bill is not valid for movement of goods without vehicle number on it. So vehicle number is mandatory for the e-way bill to be mandatory. Vehicle number is mandatory whenever e-way bill is generated. So what are the exceptions? That is exemptions from e-way bill. So e-way bill is not required to be generated when it is transporting liquefied petroleum gas to household and non-domestic exempted category, kerosene sold under PDS, postal baggage, transport department of post, natural or cultured pearl, semi-finished good, precious metal, that is gold, silver, jewelry, goldsmith, warehouse, currency, other used personal and household effects, coral work. For this, e-way bill is not mandatory. Again, when the goods are being transported on a non-motorized conveyance, say for example, Matvandi, bullock cart vehicle you are transporting, or tricycle where there is no motor, then e-way bill is not required to be generated. Where the goods are transported from customs port, airport, air cargo and land station to an inline container depot or container freight, e-way bill not required. In respect of movement in such area as notified, where exempted goods are transported other than de-oiled cake, e-way bill is not required. Where goods are transported are alcoholic liquor for human consumption and the 5 goods which are not GST not applicable, e-way bill not required. Schedule 3, neither supply of goods nor supply of services, that also e-way bill not required. Where the goods are transported under customs bonded from inland container, customs supervision or customs seal, or goods are transported in transit cargo from Nepal or Bhutan, e-way bill not required. Again, canteen supplies, there is a canteen for the army people, there also e-way bill is not required. Any movement for defense, e-way bill not required. Movement by central government, state government, local authority by goods by rail, e-way bill not required. Empty cargo containers transported not required. Goods being transported up to 20 kilometers till the Weymouth Bridge, e-way bill not required. Empty cylinder packing LPG, there also e-way bill not required. So these are the exemptions from e-way bill. And what are the documents to be carried? You should carry either an invoice or a bill of supply or a delivery challan along with the e-way bill, either in physical form. So that is a mandatory. So verification, inspection can be done by the proper officer in between, and in case he is not having, then the penalty shall be levied. Blocking of e-way bill. If a person is not filed returns, GST returns continuously for 2 months, then e-way bill will be blocked to tax period. That is 2 months normally. Then his e-way bill will be blocked. He cannot take the generate the e-way bill. And even a person whose registration has been suspended, he cannot generate a e-way bill. So this is with regard to the e-way bill. So e-way bill is issued whenever there is a transportation of goods. It has a validity, and whenever goods is more than 50,000 including tax is being transported, then e-way bill is generated. So with this we complete our GST chapter. Questions are there. Now with regard to the question and answer session, tomorrow we will have one session exclusively for the question and answers. But I want only those students who are willing to give reply. If you are not giving reply, then I don't want that students in that session tomorrow. Tomorrow's session will be question and answer session only in all the chapters. Those who are willing to join, even if one person is there or two person is there, I don't mind taking, but they should participate. You give wrong answer, right answer, nothing for me. My intention is that you should answer. If you are not answering, then please don't join tomorrow's session. I am not interested to take for those who are not participating. So only for those who are participating, tomorrow's session is there. Otherwise, please don't join and don't waste my time and your time also. So I will take this tomorrow session only for those who are participating. And if I find that someone is joined and not participating even one question, I will remove them. Right? So tomorrow's session is only a question answer session and recapture of everything. So those who want to participate, who are willing to participate in the question answer and give the answer, for them only this session is there, others it is not there. So with this we complete this GST chapter, and we'll see you tomorrow. So all the best for your exams. Tomorrow we'll have your practical question answer session alone. Any doubt you have, you can ask me now, or else we will close the session today. No doubt? Then we will close the session today.
No,
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
thank you.